Well, Robin, I am so thrilled to get to spend some time with you on so many levels, for
You as
sure.
well.
And
Anytime I can have with you is time well spent, my friend.
thank you. And I know you've done so many things, and your upcoming amazingness is coming through in the form of a book. And in relationship to the book, I know you have a lot to share as a joy coach, someone who's brought a lot of hope into the world. And I believe has crossed over into that place where people are really in that deep self-doubt for whatever reason.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if you could talk about a time where maybe back then you didn't recognize there was some form of doubt infecting you and your ability to see your amazingness, that maybe
Mm.
now you go like, oh no, that's what that was.
Hmm. Such a good question. I'm so glad that you're exploring this topic of how doubt ties into life in general, because we all feel it. And for some, we hide it. We like to project this image that everything is going really well when we really hear the voice of doubt in our mind on a very regular basis. And I'm just going to confess right here and now that I am one of those people. And so, I like to encourage people and build them up. And yet it's often challenging to apply that same advice, back to myself. I think a lot of us struggle with that. And so doubt is something that I have dealt with. And the book that we were chatting about off camera really digs into moments in my life that, as a joy coach and a person who firmly believes that joy exists, there were moments that I doubted that that was true. There were moments that I doubted my calling in general. I started to doubt my message, whether it was solid, whether it was safe, whether I really believed in it at all. And so one of those periods was a 5 month period just last year where I was recovering from a head injury. And it took a lot longer than it was supposed to. Thus, the doubt started kicking in. I started wondering, am I going to heal?
Mm.
And then it became, if I don't, can I still find this joy that I profess to the world is possible no matter what the circumstances? And man, let me tell you, it was such a time of exploration. It was a really fabulous period of growth. Yeah.
Mm. Well, and I love how you're illuminating just how the relationship, first of all, to how we're feeling in our bodies. And then we start to go, is this going to last forever?
Mhm.
And then it perpetuates, many parts of our life. Will I be able to get back to my family, get back to my business? And then it just even almost microcosmed into, even what I'm talking about, is this valuable? Yeah.
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 There were so many questions going through my head. And what I found was the thing that quieted all of that questioning going through my head was the choice to focus on what I knew for sure. Because, doubt tends to, just cause questions to just keep circling through. And one good question can quickly lead to another and another, and doubt just grows and you begin to question everything. That is not a healthy or peaceful or joyful place to be. And man, you can just be left with so much uncertainty. You can question everything that you've ever known. And I think we've all met people who are in that place. And, you know, when we recognize, okay, this is not good for me emotionally, mentally, spiritually, relationally, I was no fun to be around, and I realized, okay, something has to change. And focusing on what I knew for sure gave me roots. It gave
Mm.
me sort of a pause in the storm, if you will. It was like, okay, I know that my family loves me. I know that there will be purpose in my life, even if it's going to be different, if this thing doesn't heal or, insert situation, I know for sure that, there are things bigger than me that I can believe in with certainty. So it was about clinging to truth and being okay with questions. I could have questions, but it didn't mean that I had to come up with the answers. I think I felt a lot of pressure to get answers to all of my questions. And when I was able to just kind of separate from those and let them just be questions and not things that ruled my days and nights, the doubt, got a little smaller and a little smaller.
Well, I love that you were talking about clinging on to what you know, and a couple of questions that came up in my mind as you were saying that is, what is true here about this relationship? What do I know is true? And
Mhm.
also, adding into that, because we're so relationally, it's like, how could we get feedback from other people in a
Mhm.
way, people that are resourced and supportive of us, so
Mhm.
that could reflect back what is absolutely beautiful and congruent and true and real about us beyond this one thing that seems to grow larger than life.
Mm. That is such good advice. You're right. Because when you're the person who's trapped in that storm, it's very hard to see with clarity all that is, you're focused on the storm. So when you talk about reaching out to people who are resourced and getting their feedback, oh, it can be so different than your own viewpoint. And I have to confess, every time I hear the word resource, Feroshia, I think of you.
Oh
I'm
no.
so happy that you said that. It's a good word.
Well, I always imagine as a coach that one of the greatest gifts that we offer, this is often reflected back from clients, from students, other coaches, and talking about their clients and how they feel. It's like having someone that can see the whole of who you are and your truest nature
Mhm.
beyond those aspects of you that just seem to be, a little out of sorts, or maybe not all of who you are.
Mhm. Yeah, you're right. And I think we have to accept their wisdom, because when we are in that doubtful place, we can start doubting that they know what they're talking about. And so it might be helpful to talk to several people that you really respect, and people that are resourced and are wise, and see what patterns exist and what they're saying. It's easy to dismiss what one person says, but if you're hearing that same message from several people, it begins to take on a life of its own,
Yes.
and you can't really ignore it.
It's like, wait, I'm outnumbered. My inner critic has more voices against its belief system.
Right.
Just confirming, just confirming.
Right.
You
It
know,
makes the case for knowing wonderful people, doesn't it? Like, surround yourself
yeah.
with good
Yeah, that
people.
rule of 5 people that really have your back.
Yep. Pick 5 good
5
ones.
to 1.
Right.
Something that comes up that I often witness myself and others for sure is when we're feeling doubtful of ourselves, we create this protective nature where we
Mhm.
almost point outside of ourselves as that being the problem or that person having a problem, as a
Mm.
way almost to deflect how we're feeling about ourselves.
Mm. So interesting. Yeah. Share more about that. I'm curious where that's coming from.
Well, I'm not quite sure. I mean, childhood. But a lot of times, if we're feeling insecure, and, like you said, a lot of people don't want to share that, don't want to be seen as that vulnerable way of being. And so a guy, I think unconsciously, it could be pretty easy to, try to deflect the energy of our own felt sense of weakness or inadequacy or not
Mm.
enoughness
Mm.
to point at other people's foibles. And so use them as like the target, not
Mm.
even realizing that what's happening is not who we want to be, but just this way of deflecting that discomfort and kind of
Mm.
projecting it out. I don't know if you've ever experienced that.
It's interesting, at the end you talked about deflecting the discomfort. And I think that's really what it goes back to. It's just this ick, this discomfort that we want so badly to get rid of. And I think that we need to just get used to and comfortable with discomfort. If that's not the
Yeah.
biggest oxymoron in any podcast ever, but when we can just put a word to whatever feeling we're experiencing in the moment, doubt, grief, frustration, there's so many, but when we find a word that really identifies where we're at, and we're just present in that thing, whatever it is, and just breathe. into that and allow it to be what it is. We don't have to flick it away and hurry out of it. Sometimes just identifying what it is and just being in it is what is so necessary to then take a step when you're ready, toward your goal, whatever it happens to be. And we're so quick to just deflect that and act as if it doesn't exist or to push it off onto other people, when really what we need to do is just own our crap sometimes.
Absolutely. And I think without knowing what's happening inside of us, not noticing how we're feeling in our bodies or the emotional state we're in, it is so easy for our mind to go, it must be this outside of me. Because we always are seeing outside of ourselves. We can't look in. And, I love the concept of, when someone says, I'm going to have a finger pointing fest and one finger is outside of us, but three are still pointing back in. And I was like, think about it. Check with your mind, check with your heart, check with your gut. What is going on in your body? Are you feeling at home in yourself? If you're not, that's a good indicator. It's time to come home and take care of you. Is your heart aching or feeling upset? Again, it's like, how can you take care of you? What is it that you're needing so that maybe that doubt that you feel or that discomfort that you're trying to get away from can find a way to resolve?
I kind of think that, as listeners go back and replay this conversation, there will be some who feel that what you just shared is the greatest takeaway nugget of the whole conversation. That, that pointing and those three fingers coming back and, the areas that they're pointing to, there's so much meaning in each of those areas, and our bodies tell us so much. If we would just allow them to speak, right? And oh my goodness. So yes, thank you so much for bringing that up. And when we're like really entrenched in doubt, we do tend to ignore all of those messages. And they're waving flags, they're carrying billboards. They have a message that we need to really tune into.
Yeah, they sure do. And I think the more we recognize those messages and the more we act upon what we're learning about ourselves, I think it comes back to the more we're going to be fulfilled, the more we're going to be able to focus on what we really want that brings us joy and brings us that connection to others. And I think sometimes this is such a underdeveloped muscle, because where in our lives do we ever get trained to go like, check in with yourself? What's happening? We're like,
but when we do, and those who do benefit so richly, of course, that's the thing that they're going to want to tell other people, because there is so much validity in doing that. And Molly's very excited about this conversation. You can see she's just heading out of here, but
yep,
it feels
we've lost a dog. We've lost a dog.
There goes one listener. She's out of here. No, it just feels so good to check in and then do something. I think there's joy in action. And, when we recognize, well, my gut is out of sorts and something needs to change. And we allow space for the question, okay, what needs to change? Like what's causing this feeling that I have? Just taking a step toward that, so freeing. Even if you don't completely solve the problem right then and there, just knowing that you care enough about you to do something for you can make a person feel like flying. You want to talk about joy. When we meet our own needs, it just feels amazing.
So true and so empowering. Oh my gosh. I'm feeling it.
Me too.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. When I took care of that, I was just like instant relief.
Yes.
And I got out of my own way, and it quit being about, I couldn't figure it out, to doing something about it, or whatever that looks
thinking
like.
mode and action mode are so very different, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, as we start to close up, is there anything else that you would love to share? Some words of wisdom, learning?
I'm just rethinking what has been discussed already. And I'm so grateful that we've had this conversation, and any time with you, I just get excited to enjoy. But I think that, it really just goes back to recognizing that you have needs and that you are uniquely equipped to meet them. And it's beautiful when you do. And so often, I work with the people who are just all about the well-being of others. And they're
Mm.
my favorite people. I'm drawn to them. I'm one of them, these givers who just care so much about humanity. And yet, so rarely will turn that lens inward. And I'm guilty, right? I've shared. So, it's just when we do, it's beautiful. And I think that, it's the way that we feel when we recognize we have a need and do something about it, that feeling that we get, that joy that comes up, is there for a reason. It's because you're doing it right. It's because you're treating yourself the way you're supposed to be. You're meeting the design. We are in a position to take care of ourselves, and yet so often as givers, we're kind of waiting for someone else to swoop in and notice that we have a need, that we're really feeling low or depleted. And that's not their job. It's really ours. And that's why when we meet our needs, it feels so doggone great.
Yeah.
So don't wait for a superhero to come in. You have all you need. Just turn that camera back upon yourself and ask yourself those same questions that you so lovingly ask other people. How are you? Is there something that you need? What's on your heart today? And just get out of the way and allow yourself to share.
Beautifully said.
And
And
that no one's listening.
I was totally giggling in there because I'm like, yep, I'm waiting for someone else to notice what I need. It's not happening. You
Yep.
know?
And it's
And
not supposed to.
I
Yeah, we believe, right? Yeah. It feels good to feel good, and like meeting our own needs. That
yeah,
feels so good. Mhm.
absolutely. And I'd probably add into that being willing to ask for help if it's not coming too.
That's amen. I got a whole chapter actually too in my book about all the learning. You're right. Yeah. There's a balance there, right?
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting if we had a culture of, you know, how are you? What are you needing? And it was reciprocal. Oh my gosh. And if it
Yes.
was because I agree with you, we're the givers, and I certainly relate to that. We can get so out of balance
Yep.
because we're really good at meeting other people's needs and emphasizing what you so beautifully said. Look back in, put your camera back on you because you're worth it. And you're not going to be sustainable in what you love to do most if you aren't taking care of you. Yeah.
And to recap what you said, I mean, asking for help. I mean, we've all been on the other end of that, where someone that we love and need asks for help, and we're like, yes, I can finally do something. Right. So allow the people to be there for you when it's your time.
Yeah. Well, my dear friend, so lovely to be blessed by your amazingness and your presence and your big, gigantic heart. I
Take
always look
one to know
forward
one.
to being with you and also seeing where you're flying. Thank you so much, Robin. I really
It's
appreciate
such
you.
an honor to be with you, and just to be your friend, Feroshia. Thank you for all that you're doing.